Howdy boys and girls, how's it hanging? So I was gonna do my guide on skills as a follow-up to my rogue guide next week, but I caught the most extreme fever that I have ever experienced in my entire life. Thank you, Logan. Complete with night terrors, nearly passing out at my local games workshop, and being completely unable to be funny on a script. So instead of talking about skills today, I've decided to push that shit back a week and instead do another type of video that everyone loves watching, the Unearthed Arcana review. Today's Unearthed Arcana goes over the new race options for the Minotaur and the Centaur, and that gives me every incentive to not drop dead from this fever, because there is no way that I'm gonna die from talking about goddamn horse people. But with that out of the way, let's... Ah, crap, it's on my monitor. But with that out of the way, let's begin. So, like I said, the new Unearthed Arcana lets you play as both the Centaur and the Minotaur, two monsters that you can find in the monster manual, which leads me to believe that wizards might be probing the waters for a new set of monster PCs a la Volo's guide, but it also tells me that they're willing to step out of their comfort zone for once, because both races have the hybrid trait feature, which makes the Minotaur and the Centaur both humanoids and monstrosities, allowing anything that works in either creature type to apply to them as well. Now, I say that this is out of their comfort zone because there is absolutely no way in hell that the boys in the lab could know what the ramifications of making a race so exposed could be. But I also applaud it because having characters with dual creature types, especially creatures that are already half man, half extreme leg hair, is such an interesting idea because of the mystery of how it will react to the world. On a brief tangent, my one disappointment about being a DM is that I already know everything about D&D, at least from a mechanical standpoint, unless it's basic combat rules, so I very rarely get surprises. As a DM, I like the idea of not knowing what this weird hybrid creature will do, and that makes me happy. But that hybrid nature is the only thing tying these two creatures together, so let's take a crack at each of them individually, starting with the Centaur. So, the Centaur is the famous half-man, half-horse creature that can be found in fantasy genres all across the multiverse, equally capable of being a charismatic socialite at parties and simultaneously crapping all over the place. From the start, the horsemen get a +2 to their strength to show that centaurs never skip leg day, and a +1 to their wisdom to show that horses hold unspeakable knowledge within them. They also get to move 40 feet instead of the normal 30, they have proficiency in survival, and they can charge 20 feet to do double dice damage and attack once per short rest, which they could totally make a long rest, and I would not complain. Now, I want to take a step back and go over their two other abilities, because I've got some notes on them. First off, our horsey gets a racial weapon in the form of some kick-ass hooves, which, like most every single other racial weapon in the history of 5th edition, is almost completely useless due to the fact that strength weapons almost always do better than 1d6, which is what the hooves do. Then there's equine build, which makes it harder for you to climb things, and gives you the carrying capacity of a large creature, while also refusing to make you a large creature, which makes no sense because you are a horse. Honestly, I understand why Wizards does this. If they started letting players run around as large creatures, they would have to worry about setting up adventures and maps with large creatures in mind, and it's the same reason why they're so hesitant to allow flying creatures, even though they say it's because they're overpowered. And I get that. But Overwatch figured out that having characters with different and unique ways of experiencing the world leads to better times all around, and even though I could force my mind to accept that the Goliath is not a large creature, I cannot and will not accept that the goddamn horseman is only a medium-sized creature when all actual horses are quite large. This even creates problems within its own rules, because the same feature also lets centaurs allow creatures of medium size or smaller to ride it. And guess what's medium size? I'm just saying, keeping the centaur from being a large creature isn't the super best idea in the world. Remember what happened to Motaro? Other than that, the centaur is a sort of cool idea that I hope to see in the future. But moving on to the other race in the UA that ironically looks more like Kintaro, the Minotaur is a race that I've heard people call overpowered, but I'm not so sure. So it starts with bonuses to strength and constitution, making it perfect for melee classes like barbarians and fighters. It's naturally intimidating, and it also has a racial weapon in the form of its horns, which do the same 1d6 plus strength as the centaur. Now, where people seem to be taking issue with the Minotaur is the ability that lets it attack with its horns as a bonus action if it uses its action to dash, and also that each time you attack with the Minotaur, you can use your reaction to force it to make a strength save, which, if failed, pushes the opponent 5 feet away. Now, with the attack after a dash, I can sort of see where people might get nervous, but it's not that new to 5th edition. Monks do that, rogues do that, and even fighters with maneuvers and the right feats can do it. Hell, Tabaxi can move at light speed with their traits, and the horns themselves that you're forced to attack with aren't bad, but they do short sword damage, when any strength-based character would be doing long sword or better damage, so you're practically guaranteed to be doing less damage than you normally would as a trade-off for getting so close. You've also got to keep in mind that the only other thing that Minotaurs get is a free proficiency in intimidation and a push ability that is virtually useless. Okay, hear me out here. Unless there is an environmental hazard that the target happens to be standing directly next to, or you desperately need to get away from your opponent and thought that attacking and possibly missing, then possibly having them resist the push is somehow better than disengaging, you're not going to be using the shove for anything practical, especially since it gives the target what amounts to a free disengage at the cost of your own reaction. It's just madness and stupid. stupidity. Honestly, I don't even think the Minotaur is that bad. Maybe it needs a little bit of rewording, but that's not a big deal. So my final thoughts on this UA as a whole is it's not that bad. Like, I like that Wizards is trying new things with the races, and they've got to start somewhere, so I'm glad they're using the public playtest material to figure out what we want and don't want in our games. Sure, this needs so much refining that the smithies will be overheated for a week, but I'm not gonna complain too much about them giving us something new in an edition where new is only just starting to break away from its status as a 4-letter word. So yeah, though that's all my thoughts on it. Short video, but again, I'm dying, so I'm not even gonna do a fun little ending skit this time because there's just nothing to do. Sorry. There's a real video coming next week. But yeah, Davvy out.